Welcome to We Chat Divorce, hosted by Karen McMahon, Legal Liaison, and Catherine Shanahan, CDFA. Each episode, we sit down with divorce professionals and industry experts to provide insights and frank discussions about real people, real situations, and real divorce to help you achieve your best life post-divorce. This episode of We Chat Divorce is brought to you by My Divorce Solution, offering divorce financial planning so clients can secure the divorce settlement they deserve. Visit mydivorcesolution.com to request access.
Welcome back to We Chat Divorce, brought to you by My Divorce Solution. I'm Karen McMahon, your legal liaison, here to help you navigate the legal side of divorce with clarity and confidence.
And I'm Catherine Shanahan, certified divorce financial analyst, and your partner in building long-term financial stability throughout your divorce journey and beyond. At MDS, we believe preparation is power and clarity is your greatest asset.
Today, we had the chance to speak with someone who deeply understands one of the most emotionally draining dynamics in divorce, those high conflict personalities. And I think for most people, just by the fact that you're going through a divorce, it's high conflict by default. But there are some who deal, and I guess most who deal with very high conflict personalities.
Yeah, it was good catching up with Karen today, Karen McMahon. It was a great podcast and really resonated with me because I like analogies, right? And we talked about staying on your side of the street, which I think I can continue to talk about think about all day long.
Yeah.
You know, it's just such a good way to approach your day and your decision making because it can give you a piece of calm knowing that you're only trying to regulate yourself and not everything around you, which is what you try to do when you're going through the divorce process.
100%. And I think, I've never used that term. I don't even think I've heard that term before. So it's interesting to talk about. But I often find myself speaking with our clients about learning a new language. And it's kind of the same thing, meaning the language of, what do I want? How do things work for me? Because during the relationship with a spouse, you have that language going on specifically about finances. And so when you're going through divorce, you do have to learn a new language about how you talk about things and the mindset and Catherine, you talk about it, how you view money, how you talk about money. A lot of that has to be redirected in order for you to have a successful financially post-divorce life. So I think that it all comes together.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know me at all, you know that I just got a divorce. I had a short-term marriage the second time around, 4 years, and got divorced. But Karen, even going through that, because we didn't have any assets together, you had to help me stay on my side of the street because I was so logistically thinking, listen, this is a 4-year marriage. We have nothing together. We're just going to sign this agreement. Everybody knows what I do for a living, so there was no question there. But I kept trying to get him to see, just sign this. And you kept saying to me, Catherine, just do what you can do. What are you doing? Right. So
Yeah.
it's so hard to do.
Silence those what ifs, right? There's so many what ifs, and you feel so vulnerable to all the what ifs. And believe us, both Catherine and I know there's a ton of what ifs, but you can't control them. And the best place to stay is on your side of the street every day, all day. I love that. Yeah. It's such an important conversation we had with Karen today, packed with practical strategies. Plus, Karen is offering our listeners a free gift, her Fresh Start Guide, how to break free from a toxic spouse. So stay tuned. We'll tell you how to grab your copy later in the show.
All right, let's get into it. Here's our conversation with Karen McMahon.
Karen, welcome to We Chat Divorce.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course, and we're so excited too to have you on the show. But first, I want to introduce you to our listeners. Karen McMahon is a high conflict divorce strategist, certified divorce coach, and the founder of Journey Beyond Divorce. She's also the host of the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast and co-author of Stepping Out of Chaos, Turning Pain to Possibility. Karen began this work in 2010 after walking through her own painful divorce and discovering that it became a transformational turning point in her life. She now leads a national team of coaches, helping men and women around the world move through divorce with emotional clarity and personal growth. Karen, again, we're so glad you're here. And to start, can you tell us a little bit about your own journey and what inspired you to start Journey Beyond Divorce?
Sure, thank you. The Crib Notes version is I was married late. I was 34. We had two beautiful children, and by the time my daughter hit her second birthday, our marriage had already gone severely off the rails. And I was very confused. I didn't understand. I'm intelligent, I'm heart centered. Why can't I make this work? And this man was my Prince Charming. What happened? And there was my ex-husband he has a lot of narcissistic traits. He had a tremendous amount of anger management. I do believe he was is on the bipolar spectrum. And so it was just he was consistently inconsistent was one of my sayings. So you just never knew what you were going to get. And, uh, and I lost myself. I actually had a physical altercation with him that I began on my daughter's second birthday. And the following Monday, I called a therapist and started therapy because I knew I had become the rageaholic that I was raised by. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom was a rageaholic. And when I began to connect the dots in therapy, I realized I had brought a lot of unhealthy tendencies to the table. I was a people pleaser. I was definitely codependent. Um, I was uncomfortable with conflict because of how I grew up, and my relationship was filled with all of those things. When I finally decided to divorce, I thought, okay, it'll be over soon. And then 3.5 years later, after the courts had us hire a psychological forensic, an attorney for the children, CPS was called on us 3 times. I had to call the cops. I had to get an order of protection. I was in sales. I was a full-time, fully commissioned salesperson. I lost 3/4 of my business because I was an emotional mess. Uh, I was nothing that I tell my clients now to be. I was really a hot mess and blaming and accusing. And yet, through the process, I learned about a 12-step program. I learned to keep my side of the street clean. And that I would really say was the beginning of a pivot. I don't know that there was much coaching. This was 2002 to 2006. And so learning the 12-step concept of keep your side of the street clean was huge for me. And how important is it? And one step, one day at a time, 1 minute at a time. And then I remember calling my best friend and saying, I am so pleased with the human being I am that if I had to do it all over again, my answer would be yes on a dime, which is a pretty big statement because it was
Yeah, I
a
got
living
goosebumps. Yeah.
hell. I lived in the attic. It was 100 plus degrees for 3 of the 3.5 years. My kids were 4 and 6 when I told them. It was heartbreaking. It was scary. He told me I was going to lose the kids, and I believed him. I was so afraid that he was going to have these kids and like just crush them. And yet, fast forward all of these years, and even just right after my divorce, I knew this was for me. This was not as hard as it was absolutely for me. And I was selling commercial printing, which was a dying industry. And I thought, and I'm a Christian, and I sat on the couch and cried for months and said, God, you did not bring me through this journey to sell ink on paper. What do you have for me? How am I supposed to take the jewels of what I've learned and do something better? And I became a coach, and I knew right away, right there, like, what's your niche? And I'm like, oh my God, I was a child of divorce. I just went through a hellacious divorce. I think I'm supposed to be a divorce coach. I hit the ground going into coaching in 2010. I had my first client 10 like 25% into the program, and I just built from there. And I think that for so many coaches who have a hard time launching a business, I had no other money. It was like failure wasn't an option. I think that was like one of my mantras going into the divorce coaching, and I was so passionate about it. And I think that people really resonate with someone who's walked the walk, because you don't just have that book theory, that theoretical understanding. You have a lived, you have a sense of it on such a cellular basis. And for me, a lot of clients have hired me because they're like, I have no hope, but you seem so hopeful, Karen. I'm actually going to hire you and hold on to your hope until I can find my own.
I like that. It's so true, because we all want to be able to relate to someone, right? It's not all the degrees a lot of times hanging on the wall. It's more about, can you relate to what I'm going through? Because I don't think people relate to me. They talk over me. They talk under me. They want to tell me that my life is just going to be okay, because they don't really get it. They only get what their profession is. So when you actually have walked the walk, like you say, you're able to listen differently and speak differently to people, because you get where they are in that moment. And, we see that on the financial side all day long. We don't judge anyone because they never were in charge of their finances, and, they never looked at a statement or their tax return. There's no judgment here. It's like, let us walk you through it differently than you're used to, so that you have an understanding and can make good decisions for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I am a little teary. Just listening to
Wow.
your story. I know I don't get teary
Our,
that
our
often.
Karen doesn't get teary very often. So now me, I could bawl my eyes out right now.
Yeah, there's
One of the things that now I've been doing this for over 15 years, and so I've spoken to thousands, and one of the things I realized is I really struggled with at least one piece of anyone who comes to me. And I'm like, why? Why did I have to have all of that? And it's like, well, maybe I had to have all of that so that I could show up and go, I get it. I hear you. I feel you. I understand you in a way that so many others can't. And so what was hell has turned into just an incredible blessing. And not for me as much as for the reach and the support and the healing that I can help foster in the clients that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
there's so many pieces of your story that are so similar to mine that I really can make that connection, because I was deeply rooted in the church and my children were 5 and 7. And I felt like everything that was happening was isolating me from my family and everything I knew. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, because it really spoke to me. I do have one question though, before we get into our further discussion today. You talk about keeping my side of the street clean. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, and it actually plugs very much into what we're talking about. So most of us, when our marriage starts going a little bit off the rails, uh, we figure what we need to do is help our spouse change. And that's the beginning of the mistake, because we as human beings, we only have control of ourselves. When we bring little people into the world, we actually think we have control of them for much longer than we do. Probably 15, 16 is the edge at which, like, you start really losing control. And so here we are marrying another adult, and especially in high conflict divorce, we should all over them. You should, you should, you should, you should, you should. And I did a lot of that. And when I went into therapy and I went into the program, the question was not, what's he doing wrong? Leave him alone. He's on that side of the street. He's going to change, or he's not going to change. He's going to make his decisions. That didn't work. Barking at him, nagging him, begging him, pleading with him, that didn't work. So what if you just stay on your side of the street? What if everything is about, what did I bring to the table? what are my fears? What are my insecurities? How am I reacting? How am I showing up in a way I don't want to? How is my thought behavior as well as my action behavior serving me? And when I started doing that, I began to realize my own insecurities, my own judgment, my unforgiveness, my expectations that were never verbalized or agreed to by the other person. And when you keep your side of the street clean, when you focus on what you have control over, which is you, in a process that is so overwhelming and uncertain, and I want to say out of your control, people are always like, how am I supposed to feel empowered? We can feel so incredibly empowered in a process that we don't have a lot of control over when we're controlling ourselves. Because, and especially I'll say with the high conflict, it's often the spouse of the high conflict person that looks like the high conflict person. We're frothing at the mouth, we're raging, we're hysterical, we're screaming, we're frustrated, we're melting, we're shutting down, we're doing all of these things. And when we work on that, and to the point of our topic today, and we show up calm, clear, and confident, we feel empowered because we're controlling the most important thing, which is how am I going to show up, and like how do I align with my values?
Yeah, and that really plays through in the financial side as well, because, a lot of times in these high conflict divorces, well, my spouse won't agree to that. My spouse isn't going to do that. My spouse wants that asset. No, my spouse won't give me that asset. And so we try to reframe it. We don't tell them what they get, but, what are your thoughts? What do you think of the impact of this decision? Where would you like to be? What asset would you like to keep? And what's the value to that asset? And all of a sudden you do see a little light coming on in their heads, like, oh, let me just control my own thoughts here. And then, yes, you're going to compromise. I hate to tell you this, if you're listening to this podcast, you are going to compromise somewhere down the line. You don't get everything that you want. It just doesn't work that way. But if you're clear on what options are available to you, based on you and your knowledge and what you know, you don't have to worry about the other side of the street, as you're saying. That's not your job to worry about the other side of the street. So I love this analogy because, of course, I love being able to relate to something. So I can relate to staying on my side of the street.
And what's interesting about what you said, I have this little mini course I put together because of exactly what you just said. I'll get on the phone with someone and start coaching them, and they'll start saying, well, my spouse thinks, well, my spouse says, well, my spouse believes. And I'll go, excuse me, let's pause the call. Could you ask him or her to leave the room, because I'm actually just coaching you. And my course is Reclaim Your Mind, Evict Your Spouse from Your Mental Space. Because so many people come and they're so used to the narrative that their husband or wife has told them that they're fighting against themselves, even in their own head. And when we as professionals can say, let's quiet that voice and let's actually tune into what you want, what you think, what you feel, what you believe, all of a sudden they get centered and they start feeling aligned with themselves. And that's the beginning of feeling empowered. It's like inviting people to come home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it goes really sorry, Karen, but it really goes further than just the divorce process. And if you're listening, I want you to understand this, because a lot of people say, your divorce is over. Yay, let's have a divorce party. And you're so excited. But everyone goes home after that. And you are sitting at home by yourself. And so I'm just going to speak financially. So financially speaking, even if you knew your options and you walked away with what was the best scenario for the family, what have you still have to have the confidence to not say, oh, what would my spouse do right now? I remember for me, and my spouse and I were both financial people, but I handled everything. But it was still post-divorce. It was still scary. Like, oh my God, I'm going to buy a car without talking to my spouse about it. I had a 23-year relationship. Now all of a sudden I'm making this decision by myself. Oh my gosh, I have to go think about buying a home by myself, and I have nobody to bounce that off of. So if they do that work with you, you're going to have more confidence, even post-divorce, feeling clear about what decisions you have to make for yourself. And the answer is not always getting to another relationship.
Right. Or expecting that your attorney is going to take care of matters so that in place of you. And something that, our topic today is staying calm, clear, and confident in a high conflict divorce. And I think the fork in the road is exactly what you're talking about, Karen. Taking the time to invest in yourself to also be a part of that ability to engage in that journey. Short of that, and I think I did this, I didn't invest in myself, frankly, but you did. And I see the difference in our journeys. I wanted someone to take care of it for me. I worked in a law firm, and if I just get the best attorney in this county, I'm going to be fine. Well, that wasn't true, but you took the pathway of, I'm going to do what it takes to invest in myself, to become clear, to do what I can do, so that when you emerged on the other side, you not only emerged a better person, but I'm sure your children and the family unit did as well. That's just my presumption, but I see how you're speaking about it. So I think I can be pretty confident there.
I think it's such a good point. We don't want to diminish. It's vitally important that you understand the legal process, that you understand your finances, and yet you could emerge with the best settlement. And if you haven't done any of your inner work, if you haven't looked at that, if you haven't healed your heart, refined your character, there is no freedom. You have a piece of paper and maybe a lot of money, but nothing else has changed. I have had people come to me, I think the latest was 12 years, 10 or 12 years post-divorce, lost all those years because they were still looking across the street. They were looking at what their spouse did and who their spouse was with. And so the freedom doesn't come from the piece of paper and the finances. We need it, and it's important. But that doesn't bring the freedom. The freedom comes from disentangling yourself from the other human being and then paying attention to what got me there. What was the luggage I threw on the table with my spouse? And how can I clean that up so that I, I have a colleague who says, be the one to meet the one, become the one to meet the one, so that I am everything I want in a partner. I am calm, clear, and confident. I am able to regulate my emotions, manage my mindset, notice my judgment, work on my unforgiveness, address my fear of conflict. I was talking to a client yesterday and I was like, that's not conflict. That's just a disagreement. Yeah, but I was raised where anytime there was a disagreement, X, Y, and Z would happen. That's the inner work that we do that enables somebody. And then honestly, I walked away with $60,000 of debt, 2 kids, maybe half of what I should have gotten in child support. And I had this commission only job with almost no clients left. And so one could say my settlement was as horrific as it could get. I have loved my life. I feel so deeply grateful for both my divorce. And last night I was speaking to a client who was talking about regret, and I wished I had married the other one. And I'm like, I am so glad I married my husband. Because number one, raising the 2 human beings we brought into the world has been such a gift. But even more than that, because of him, I am who I am today. And because of the work that I chose to do. And so I think that for each listener, we can take the circumstances that we're facing and look at it from a vantage point that serves us. And the final thing I want to say is my children are rock stars, only because I didn't flood them with my stuff. And that's so important. And so we can break generational chains of whatever we came from by getting healthy and then just leading by example with our children. And even if you have adult children, the best time to start is today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And and then your children, my daughter got married 5 years ago now. And you have to I love marriage. I just got divorced again, but I love marriage. And all my friends and family say you better never get married again. But anyway, I'm a marrying kind of girl. I love relationships, but keeping that just because you're divorced from your kid's spouse, other parent. Um, doesn't mean you have to be negative about them entering into divorce. I hear a lot of divorcees saying, oh my God, I'm telling my daughter she shouldn't get married. Marriage is terrible, blah, 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 because they're still living in there. They haven't done the work with you like you're speaking about. So they live in this negative Nelly kind of thing, where I'm like, great, communicate. And, I just give them hindsight tip kind of tips if they ask, right? And that's hard too. And I think that if you haven't done the work to heal yourself from your own divorce, you're not able to do that. So it spreads out in so many areas of your life moving forward. And it's one quick life that we have.
That's so true. And I can tell for our clients coming through our process of the MDS portrait, if they have done the work, they're approaching decisions very differently. They're not in that space of saying, well, I'm going to let my spouse choose the mediator so that, I won't exacerbate the emotions here, or I don't want to take what's not mine, or I have to tiptoe very carefully so that he or she doesn't get upset. And to your point of staying on your side of the street, if you're doing that work for yourself, you can just make better decisions, more practical, more pragmatic decisions as you're working through your finances and as you're working with your attorney through these legal decisions. It does make a difference.
Yeah, 100%. And so much of what we do is unconscious, right? So it's whether I behave the way I do because I was raised by, in my case, a rageaholic and an alcoholic, or because of my Catholic upbringing, or because of my Italian and Irish heritage, or because of American society. So we all have, and then we have unconscious beliefs. And when you slam into the wall of high conflict divorce, there is an invitation to slow down. And as we talk about the work, I would love to touch on three things. And the first one is mindset. We kind of go along somewhat unconscious. I was highly unconscious, and we just do whatever we're doing. But when you slam into this particular wall, there's an opportunity to say, let me slow things down. How am I looking at this? Why am I always worried about him and so less likely to take care of me? And so one thing that my clients will walk through, it's like, where are you on your list of priorities? And typically, I'm not at the bottom of the list. I'm just not on the list at all. So what does that mean? Well, everything you do. I say yes when I want to say no. I act like a martyr because I did things I didn't want to do that I could have said. Like there are all of these things. And so the first thing is mindset. How are you looking at things? How are you looking at your situation? And even how are you looking at your soon to be ex? Because when you can start saying, what is my thought about that? Oh, so for me, he's going to get custody of the kids. It took me so long to slow it down and say, well, why in the world would I think he's going to get all the custody of the kids? Because he says so. And why do I listen to that? And what else is possible? And what did my attorney tell me? And why am I listening to my spouse over my attorney when my attorney actually does this, not, for a living? And then you start looking at, well, I'm so on my ear, which I was so emotionally overwhelmed. Do I even understand what that means? Like, do I know when I get triggered, how it shows up in my body? Do I know when I get triggered how to bring myself back to calm rather than acting out of that trigger and being reactive and throwing emotional grenades across the room, which is what we end up doing? And so I think that the three areas are really mindset, emotional regulation, and boundaries. And when we can begin to work on those, just baby steps, just change one thing. Just the next time you think a thought, say, how true is that? That's the thing. How true is that? And then if you're like, no, that's true, he's going to screw me and take all that money. Okay, what else might be true? What is your attorney saying? What are your legal rights? What else might be possible? And if you've been bullied, then their voice is so very loud, and your inner critic is equally as loud. And the thing we want you to tap into is your intuition, your gut. your inner wisdom, and that's going to whisper. And until you calm the chaos of your life, you're not going to hear the whisper. And that whisper is the guiding light that's going to get you to where you need to go.
I like it.
I do too. And Karen, is this what you walk through people through in your 12-step divorce recovery program? Is that
Yeah.
what this is?
Yeah, so one of the steps is so the first step is about staying calm and learning to take a pause, right?
Mhm.
Because I mean, I have clients where it's like I'll even be coaching them and their spouse or their ex texts them and they're about to stick their fingers on the phone and I'm like, put the phone down, breathe.
Mhm.
There's no fire. There's no fire. Let's look at how did that make you feel? My heart's pounding, I'm angry, like whatever. Okay, let's breathe.
Mhm. That's
What
so
did you
true.
make that mean? He said, she said, blah, blah. What did you make that mean? I'm bad, I'm wrong, what if it just means that he or she is splashing their emotional reaction onto you? What if it just means that they're angry, that they're out of control? What if you just make it mean what it is? And so that I am the center, that people pleasing piece, which is anything that anyone says or does says something about me. And I've raised my children on this. It's like what somebody else says or does is about them. What you say or do is about you. Keep your side of the street clean. And so we walk them through that. Another one is mindset. Mindset, there's four things, right? There are our assumptions because it happened before, it's going to happen again. Our interpretations, which is my perspective of what you said and what it means. Our limiting beliefs, which is what I talked about earlier, our cultural upbringing, religious upbringing, and everything else. Our beliefs, those limited beliefs are often the unconscious ones that we don't even realize. And then the one we all love so much, which is our inner critic. And when we start going, oh, that's what's going on between my ears. Well, what if I just clean all of that up? What if I just slow down? I let him or her deal with their craziness and I just focus and clean that up and start noticing and start questioning, and certainly having a coach or a therapist as a sounding board, because if you're just in your head, that's never good. Those things go a long way. We have one on uh, choosing between judgment and curiosity. Yeah, into divorce, we're all really judgmental. We're judgmental of our spouse, we're judgmental of the divorce system, we're judgmental of our financial planners. Like there's just judgment going everywhere. Get curious. Wow, I'm so triggered by Catherine and Karen and what they told me. Okay, why am I so triggered? I have a lot of money fear. Okay, so what's going on with my money fear? I've had millionaires say I'm going to be homeless and in the street. And I'm like, what's the likelihood? Okay, maybe it's not going to be that. Okay, let's start looking at what is likely. What's going on beneath that? It's the money fear, which I'm sure you guys deal with all the time. So those are the things that we take them step by step through the 12-step program to, it's all inner work. The 12-step program is all inner work that has beautiful outer impacts once you start behaving out of those new awarenesses.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, Karen, you're sharing so much wisdom and everything that you're saying today for people. I'd like to just share a couple of highlights of a few important takeaways that I'm hearing. If you're going through divorce and you need to find that calm, I love your stay on your side of the street analogy. It's really, gosh, if you could just start with that one statement throughout your day today, okay, am I on my side of the street? I'm doing it right now myself personally. And that will really help you shift that, excuse me, that mindset that you're talking about, because your mind is so powerful and your mind is going to direct you through this divorce process and beyond. So if you could just take away today the mindset shift and staying on your side of the street, I think that you're going to change the way you move through the rest of your process.
For sure. And Karen, I really appreciate what you said about put your phone down, take the time to pause and breathe, because every day I'm speaking to people who are in the, I think the term is emotional dysregulation of just the response. Yesterday, I was on the phone with someone and she was trying to make a decision. And she said, he's texting me right now. I have to make the decision right now. And I said, well, do you? I can understand the emotion, but do you? And is that more important than getting financial clarity? You get to decide that. I'm not a divorce coach, but I see it happen. And so I appreciate that you offer this for people because divorce can go fast. It can be hugely disruptive, and finding that ability to make good decisions is so important. So thank you again for being with us today. Your story, your work, you're doing what you offer hope for people who feel stuck in pain, fear, and confusion. So can you talk and let our listeners know where they can learn more about Journey Beyond Divorce and connect with your resources?
Yeah, thanks so much. That's my dog, if you hear her in the background. So Journey Beyond Divorce is also a podcast. We're one of the top podcasts, divorce podcasts in the world and in the United States. And we have over 425 episodes on our website, which is jbddivorcesupport.com. You can actually grab a series if there's something specific or a specific stage of divorce you're in, like a curated playlist just for that. And we have our gift to your listeners is a rapid relief call, and that is a call with one of our coaches where you can get clear and you can find out what other support we have that might serve you and how coaching has worked and supported others. And so rapidreliefcall.com, nice and easy, is the way to get on our schedule. And I'm so glad to have met the two of you and so appreciate the robust support that you offer clients, especially having both the financial and legal background to help them. And I think that, for me, with every client I talk to, the one thing I tell as coaches, we're supposed to ask and not tell, but the one tell is always find yourself a rock star financial professional, because no matter how much or how little you have, it's a vital part of the divorce journey. And especially if you have money mindset issues, people like you are just gold for everyone going through divorce. So thank you so much for what you do.
And likewise, and thank you for that. And to our listeners, if you're navigating divorce and you feel like you're constantly in defense mode, you're not alone. At My Divorce Solution, we help you step out of that survival mode by giving you the tools to prepare and protect your finances as you move forward. So visit us at mydivorcesolution.com to learn how the MDS Financial Portrait can help you organize your assets, prepare for negotiations, and take the guesswork out of your next steps.
Be sure to join the MDS community, your hub for trusted resources, expert guidance, and real connection. Whether you're just starting your divorce journey or already rebuilding, it's a safe space to access free financial tools, find support, and move forward with confidence. We'll drop the link in the show notes.
And don't forget to like, follow, and share this episode. Until next time, stay on your side of the street, take a breath, protect your peace, and let knowledge be your power.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of We Chat Divorce. We hope this episode was informative and supportive on your divorce journey. If you're looking for more support for navigating divorce with confidence and clarity, head over to mydivorcesolution.com for more podcast episodes, divorce events, and resources for your divorce. We'll see you back here for our next episode.